Turn to the United Arab Emirates, where authorities have been actively vaccinating their people to ensure protection against COVID-19. For more on this, I have Ali Al-Sheikh live on the line. Welcome to the program, Ali.
Yes, and I can hear you. Thanks for hosting me.
Right, Ali. Now, I hear over 70% of those eligible for COVID-19 vaccinations in the UAE received their doses. Tell us a bit more about this very remarkable achievement.
That's true. I mean, it was really remarkable achievement by the UAE government. Actually, it's 78% of eligible population in the UAE actually vaccinated. Those stats were announced yesterday by the UAE government. So, I mean, the vaccination campaign, it was a big campaign in the UAE since the beginning. I mean, since the beginning, there were clinical trials from last year. And then they started the vaccination program all across the country. I mean, vaccination centers were open, drive-through centers, because, you know, an increasing access of testing is really an important factor to curb COVID-19. And UAE has been extremely energetic in the fight to curb COVID-19 by setting drive-through testing center across the country. I mean, you drive your car, you get the test centers. And then after that, they use this for vaccination programs. In the UAE, we have a different kind of vaccination in the UAE. And they were encouraging the community to be vaccinated to reach the herd immunity. And they are really doing well in the UAE with the vaccination program.
Ali, I understand those eligible for vaccinations in the UAE are those aged 16 and above. Which vaccines were administered on those aged 16, 17 and 18?
16, you said?
Yes, 16 years old.
Well, for now, I mean, recently they announced that Pfizer can be used for the ages 12 years old and above. Because before, the vaccination used to be for people from the age of 16 and above. We used Sinopharm, Pfizer, Sputnik. But now they announced that people on the age of 12 and above, they can be vaccinated.
Ali, were people there allowed to perhaps choose the vaccine that they would prefer to have administered?
Yes, you can choose any vaccine, actually. They use different apps. You can choose any vaccine. It's up to you. I mean, people are searching for different kind of vaccines, and then they decide. So, I mean, at the beginning, it was only Sinopharm at the beginning. I mean, what I'm talking about from last year. But now, I mean, it's more vaccines allowed in the country, and it's up to you to choose which vaccine.
I see. Keeping in mind what Ali has just said, Professor Kim, what are your thoughts on allowing members of the public to have a selection or option to choose vaccines to boost perhaps the inoculation campaign?
Wow, that's a very difficult question.
It is. And if you had more supplies, I suppose it would be possible, but still.
Well, people might choose according to their thoughts, and for Korea, I mean, most of our population had AstraZeneca, and most of the side effects came from AstraZeneca. So we know much about Astra, and actually we don't have enough experience with other companies. So
that's a very good point.
Yeah, but if we think of the variants, I think RNA virus is quite effective right now. But if we think about the mortality, it's almost the same. So any kind of vaccine will work for that situation. And as Ali is in the program right now, we have many questions for him right now, because South Korea and UAE is quite different. Weather is different, and the kinds of vaccine used is different, and the population composition is different. I mean, Korea is like a very homogeneous country, but UAE might have a lot of workers coming from foreign countries.
Right, 90% of the population there are foreign workers, right, Ali?
Yes, yes. We have around 200 nationalities living in the UAE.
And how are authorities able to get the foreign workers to go and get their vaccines?
Well, it was at the beginning there were concerns about taking the vaccine, just like everywhere in the world. But then, I mean, educational campaigns, awareness campaigns, the government launched a different kind of awareness campaigns. They show the best for the vaccines and why we should take it. And sooner, I mean, after in the beginning, people were hesitating, but when days start passing, people posting on social media that he took the vaccine or so other, people were encouraged to take the vaccine. And for the workers, I mean, we have also a lot of workers here in the UAE. I mean, the educational campaigns in their languages, I mean, here they use different languages. In their language, the educational campaigns, it's reached them. So they became more aware about the importance of vaccine. Any kind of vaccine, it will work.
Right. Ali, now despite the high vaccination numbers in the UAE, authorities there are still tackling well over 1,000 infections on a daily basis, I understand. What appears to be keeping the tally relatively high?
Well, yesterday, for example, the number was 1,672 new COVID-19. So from the beginning, I think, of the pandemic, the UAE reported around 559,000 cases. The thing is, the recovery rate is really high in the UAE. I mean, it's 539,000 people were recovered from the coronavirus. UAE, from the beginning, they start opening the borders and welcome people here. I mean, they have a strong belief and confidence on their system and what they achieved until now. So, I mean, recently, yesterday, they allowed all events, exhibition activities like sports, culture, social activities, concerts to be open in the UAE, but for vaccinated people. So the vaccinated people, they kind of will have a privilege in going back to normal. And life is really back to normal in the UAE months ago. I mean, you can see shopping centers, a lot of people visiting it. I mean, the thing is, people still following the precautionary measures that have been announced since the pandemic, when it started last year, about wearing masks and keeping social distancing. They are strict with that. And that's what really helped to establish just like a new condition of people walking safely in the streets despite COVID-19.
That is very encouraging to know. Keeping in mind what Ali has just said, Professor Kim, what do you suppose can Korea take away, so to speak, from the situation in the UAE?
Well, I think there are a lot of communications coming and going from India to UAE, as far as I understand. I don't know whether Ali has a data about that cases of Indian variants or not, but I think there's a high possibility about that. And because the new variants are usually more infectious, and that means it's very hard to contain. So still, we might have to keep a very strict quarantine measures until India is under control right now. And having a very subjective and accurate data after vaccination is very important. And I wonder whether Korea is doing in a proper way or not, because since I had a first shot and tomorrow I'm going to have the second one, but I think I have to be monitored more closely for any side effects or something, and like to check for antibody or something else. I wish that we keep on very strict monitoring even after the vaccination. And even after the second shot, everybody knows that we still have to keep on social distancing, mask wearing, and hand washing, everything. And we saw many countries, since we had an outbreak in India, then it moved to Nepal, then to Bangladesh, and to Cambodia. If it's march on like that, and now Taiwan used to be a very model case to quarantine against COVID-19, but right now it's only half size of Korea, but they have hundreds of cases, which is very bad right now. So we have to be very vigilant, and the health authorities should prepare for any possible breakthrough infections. So we have to study UAE, India, and other countries, and then prepare for the next.
All right, because it is a global challenge right now.
Yeah.
Ali, the UAE also looks to be the first country to formally introduce booster shots, as authorities there have announced plans to offer a third shot to those who receive China's Sinopharm vaccine. Could you tell us more about this, please?
Yes, recently the UAE authority, they said that people who get the second dose of Sinopharm, after 6 months of the second dose, they can take a booster dose. It's now for the people who are over age of 60, I mean the elderly people, and that's actually it's a booster. I mean it will increase the immunization of people here in the UAE, and they told people it's okay to take the booster. It's up to you if you want to take the booster, but it's allowed now to get the booster for Sinopharm, just for Sinopharm.
I see. Ali, you mentioned earlier about the vaccination campaign having been extended to include those aged between 12 and 15 in the UAE with the Pfizer vaccine, of course. Now, what more can you tell us about this recent decision?
Well, from the beginning of the pandemic, I mean, the schools were also affected. I mean, students were going for online studying. And this year, we have the schools is either you go online or you go to the site. So I think with this new order that to give vaccine for students, 12 years old and above, they want people also students to go back to their normal life. I mean, away from the online learning, it is really important to go back to schools. I mean, the kids, they need to play in the schools and they need to see each other. So with this order, it will enhance the situation of immunization of everybody here in the UAE. I mean, 78% of eligible people vaccinated. So they are looking for more categories.
I see. And Professor Kim, as a doctor yourself, what are your thoughts on the inclusion of minors in the public vaccination campaign?
You mean kids?
Yes, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Yeah. Safety is a primary issue, and vaccination above 12 years of age has a little dispute because I think it's relatively safe if there's no shortage of supply. But we have to approach very carefully for children not to disrupt the routine vaccination schedule. And most of the vaccination, the effect lasts for 10 to 15 years. And many articles insist that there are some non-specific immune booster after some vaccinations against COVID-19, such as MMR or BCG or something. So if your children is on routine vaccination schedule right now, I think it's not that urgent. I mean, they must be age less than 12. And we have another issue about the dosage of the children. Should we use the half of the adult or how much? So that's another issue because usually children have a very strong immune response when they got vaccinated. So I think it's going to take some years to have a clear, definite indication for children for COVID-19 vaccination.
I see. All right, Professor Kim, as always, thank you very much for your insights and get plenty of rest and drink plenty of water before your vaccination tomorrow.
Thank you.
And Ali, over in the UAE, thank you very much for taking my impromptu questions as well.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting me. It was my pleasure.
Right then, well, that brings us to the end of this edition of COVID-19. The battle against the pandemic continues in most parts of the world, so do seek to take care. Thank you for watching.